Hello, Jedis. So I am live, and today I wanted to share with you why I sacked myself from my salon business. Okay, completely sacked myself from my salon business. And I'd just like to ask you, salon owners out there, is it time that you sacked yourself from your salon business? So here's what I want to share with you. Something happened to me many, many years ago. Two things, actually. Let me share with you these two instances of what made me start to think about how secure my business was and the idea of having freedom from my business. So it first started when I very first opened my salon, which at the time of recording this was 20 years ago. Right now, 20 years ago. So back in 2002, I opened my first salon business. And when I went for insurance, I always remember the gentleman asking me, he was asking all the questions as they do to do with insurance. And I remember him asking me, if, for example, you had an accident, if something happened and you weren't able to cut hair, do the hair, or whatever it was, how would that affect your business? Would you still make an income? And I remember that sticking in my mind of thinking, oh, okay, so what if I did have an accident? What if something did happen to me? Um, Crikey, how would that impact my business? So that was the first kind of little planting of the seed in my mind. And then about 3 years on, because that was when I first started my business, which was 2002, and I would say roughly about 2000, let me think, 2005, shortly after 2005, in fact, into 2006 it would be. So in 2006, I had another life experience that happened that this question came back again in my mind because I had been suffering from really bad back pain. It came on a few months after having my second child, my son, and there was no explanation to it. It was chronic back pain. I suffered that for 2 years and I was going to all the specialists. I was taking painkillers every 2 hours for 2 years, paracetamol, and then 2 hours later, ibuprofen, 2 hours later, paracetamol, 2 hours, ibuprofen. And I did that for 2 years. I invested a fortune going to see every alternative therapist that you can think of. You name all these things. I would hear them from the grapevine. I'd hear them from clients. So, oh, such and such visited such and such with their sore leg and it got better. And I was literally going to anyone and everyone because when I'd gone to the hospital and I'd waited for so long to get like a specialist, back appointment. And I remember leaving in tears, absolutely devastated. I actually remember one of the nurses calling me back because she'd seen how upset I was because after waiting for so long to be seen, they wouldn't give me an MRI scan. They didn't understand what it was that was wrong with my back. And he basically said, well, I think you would need to give up hairdressing. And I bear in mind this was 20 years ago, so I would be, about 16. So I would be in my early 30s. And yeah, he was basically saying, and I'd never had problems before, and he was saying, oh, well, we don't know what it is. It's just wear and tear. You'd have to give up hairdressing. And again, there was this thing coming back to me thinking, what would I do? Like, what would I do? And I remember thinking, I'm not doing that. I need to find out what's wrong with, my back, get it fixed. And also I did start thinking, Craigie, I need to start thinking out of the box here. What if I ever did have to um, give up hairdressing or give up my job? How would my salon survive? How would it survive without me? Could I do it? All of these questions that came up. By the way, if you're watching this, type in, let me know who's here, type into the comments, and definitely type into the comments as we go along if you can relate to any of this. So there I was, after seeing so many different types of therapists, and then eventually, after a long, long time, like I say, after about 2 years, I went to this woman, and by the time I went to see her, I remember thinking, I don't care who you are, don't care what you do. Like I was literally broken. Don't care, just do whatever it is that you do. Let's see if it works or not. And usually I'd hand over somewhere between hundreds of pounds. I tried hypnotherapy, I tried everything. And she was like just £40 or something. I can't remember, maybe even less. Just handed it over for the session. Didn't really think much about it. It was just yet another thing that I tried, and didn't think much of it. Left, and then what happened the next day was I got out of my bed and I went to go and put some. I seen some washing. I went to go and put washing in, or I went to take washing out of the dryer, or something like that. And then all of a sudden, without realizing, I thought, oh my God, I've just got up. I couldn't get out of bed in the morning without taking painkillers, and I had to wait for them to kick in. And sometimes I have to get my children to get it for me. I could not get out of bed. And I remember this day I'd got up and I just went and I bent, and it was like, oh, I could bend. It wore off, but then I went back to see the woman, and after 2 visits, it started to get better. But in the meantime, my doctor, as a last resort, she says, Caroline, what I'm going to do is override. I wasn't able to get an MRI scan. She went, I'm just going to go override all the specialists. I'm going to go straight to the MRI department. It's my last chance to get you seen. And within 2 weeks, I had an appointment. And when I went, they found two big, giant, like cysts in my back. And I had to go back in a few months to look closer at it, to get like another scan to look closer, like, whatever it's called when you're pregnant, when they have that kind of thing on you. And I had to go back to have a closer look at what these two big things, one was like 10 centimeters wide, the other one was 5 centimeters. But in the meantime, as I was waiting for this other appointment, I'd gone to this alternative woman who suddenly it started to get better and better. So by the time I went to get this scan, this closer scan, they were like, there's nothing there. There was absolutely nothing there after 2 years. Anyway, to cut a long story short, during that time and that horrific ordeal after that kind of couple of years, and being on the floor, standing cutting hair and feeling that painkillers wear off, and having to excuse yourself, go through to the back, get more painkillers because you could feel the pain. As soon as they wore off, the pain was like you couldn't survive. Like the pain was, I could not have stood and cut hair. I would literally be writhing in pain if I had no painkillers. That horrific experience did make me start to think, how would this business survive without me? What if I do have to give it up? And that's when I started to make the decision, and I started to plant the seed off. I want to build a business that runs without me, because even if I can't work on the floor, even if I can't be the main person taking in all the money, I have to build something that is more sustainable, right? That's more secure for my children. Here I was as a single mother. I have to create something that's more sustainable. Can you relate to this? And that was when I made the decision of, I have to build up a team. I have to build a team around me, and I have to find out what I need to know to be able to build a business that runs without me. So I went from doing all the jobs. Who can relate to that? Put into the chat, do you do all the jobs in your salon? I went from doing all the jobs, all the roles. I'm going to read some of them. I wrote some down. It's not a fully comprehensive list, but I'll give you some. And please tell me if you can relate to them, if you too are doing all these jobs, or at one point have. I was doing all of these jobs, and gradually I started to suck myself from these jobs, one by one, bit by bit. And I started to outsource to other people. I started to build my team. I started to focus on my team. And by the time, many of you know, there's another story that comes after this. I'm not going to get into that right now. But by the time my third child was born, I only went back on the tools 1 day a week. And what happened was, when I realized that I'd taken this maternity time off, and I realized that, I was gone off in maternity, I'd lost my manager who'd walked out, and I just had these two young graduates who were holding the fort. I thought I was going to lose everything. And when I came back after maternity, I realized that we hadn't lost any income. In fact, by a slither of an amount, we'd actually grown it compared to the months before. So say if it was a 3-month period or whatever it wasn't even as long as that. Let's say I was off for 2 months. We hadn't lost anything compared to the 2 months before. And that was when I made that decision. I wasn't going back. I wasn't going to go back, because if I did, all of the clients would just immediately, like a magnet, come back into my column, and I would go back to being the busiest stylist. I would be the busiest one. And they would go back to being quiet. I would go back to having the busiest column and doing all the other jobs of about 10 or more people. And I made a decision I just was not going to do that. Now, guys, what I would say to you is there are some things that I'm going to talk about today that maybe you've never thought of it before. Maybe you're just starting to think about it now, or maybe you do have this already in your plans to completely get off the tools or just step away from the tools more. But this lesson that I'm giving you here today, please, please listen carefully, because this changed everything for me, everything. So for one day a week, I went back on the tools, that was it. And the rest of the time, I worked on my business, not in it, so to speak. I mean, literally, I started to manage things virtually from my office at home because I was a single parent at that time. But before that, I'd been gradually kind of weaning down. But this one day a week, I just never went back. I did a lot. I was a single mum to 3 children. I did a lot of virtual managing from home. Now, there was a lot of things that had to happen to enable me to do that. I'm going to share some of them with you today. But let me tell you about some of the jobs. Tell me if you relate to this, of that I had to sack myself from. There's no particular order here, okay? So, but one of the first was front of house, like diary management. So I would have a look at the diary at home, a very, very close look. When I was virtually managing the place, I had eyes on it at home. So I could see if things weren't put in properly and so on. But I wasn't the front facing of the customers. If I seen something wasn't right, I would connect with the team. I'd say, why is that appointment in here? Whatever, until they managed it like impeccably, absolutely impeccably, because for two things, I was constantly teaching them how to do it, constantly guiding them, and they also knew I was watching too, so they got the hang of how it should be done, and they also knew that was just the way it had to be done. That was the best way to manage the diary, putting in customers as early in the week, as early in the day as we could, and so on. So they just got so used to it, and they knew that I still had eyes on the business, even though I wasn't actually there. So it's one of the first things was the front of house, the diary management, taking the calls. To this day, I don't remember. I really, really do not remember when was the last time I ever took an appointment at my salon. Even if I'm in, I will not, even if there was nobody answering the phone, I will not answer the phone. I'll come back to that later, how key that is, and why that is. You might think, well, that's crazy, but I'll come back to that. But I will not answer the phone. Partly because, well, I'm so out of it now. I'm not a qualified person to answer the phone, and I don't want to give the clients a negative experience, so I will not answer the phone. Customer care, so I stopped dealing with any inquiries, or even if there was a complaint, if somebody wasn't happy with their hair or they want to come back, whatever it may be, all of that stopped. That was passed over to someone else. Managing the team, stopped doing that. Being the busiest stylist, stopped doing that. Stop taking any calls, not just client calls or anything like that, but any calls. So if anyone phoned, hi, can I speak to the owner? Hi, can I speak to, saying my name and so on, as if they knew me. And, for years, some people would be duped. It would be like as if the person on the end of the phone actually knew me. Oh, there's such and such on the phone. You'd go on the phone, it'd be like just somebody trying to sell something. I just stopped. So even if I was there, it'd be like, no, she's not here at the moment. Can I take a message? Everyone was trained. Even when new people started to come in, there was always that little crossover that was quite funny. They just started, and if they'd seen that I'd come in and I was through the back, they'd come through with the phone. Someone wants you, and everyone else would have a little laugh in their minds, thinking, no, you'll never get her to answer the phone. I'm notoriously difficult to reach. You'll never get me when you phone the salon. Stopped answering anything like that. I stopped taking any new clients to begin with. I stopped doing any color, completely stopped color. I don't remember the last time I did a color. I stopped doing the education eventually. It wasn't all at once. This was all kind of gradual. And I started to cut down my time and the hours on the floor. Stopped doing the education. So we now have an education director, and stuff like that. Stop doing all the bookkeeping. So there's certain things that you still have to do. Obviously, it is my business. There's certain things that I have to do, but it's completely outsourced in the sense of it's completely outsourced. Sometimes it's like, can you find this receipt? But the only time that ever comes through to me, it goes through an army of people first before it would ever come to me to find that receipt. It would have to be like someone just doesn't understand where it's come from. They can't find it anywhere. It's just, I don't do any of that stuff. Before I'd done things like designing, I did even design the refit of my business way back in the early days and so on. Stopped doing anything like that. Stopped doing social media. I used to do all my social media. I don't do any of that. Stock, wages, dealing with suppliers, anything like that. Don't remember the last time had anything to do with the stock order. One-to-ones with the team that eventually passed over. I do one annual meeting a year. I do like our general annual meeting. I don't see any reps. If you're a rep and you're watching this and you've seen me and we've chatted and we've met up, then that's very, very rare. Like very rare. I don't really see or speak to any of the reps. Didn't do any press. I used to do all the PR, reaching out to the locals and magazines and papers, reaching out to local businesses and JVs. Don't do any of that. That doesn't mean that someone else isn't doing it. It's all been outsourced, these jobs, to someone else. I stopped finding all the data for the awards that I used to do myself. That was passed on to someone else. Eventually, I used to write all the awards. Stopped doing that. I think I didn't even write any awards this year. No, I didn't write any awards this year, I don't believe at all. Usually I used to write a lot of business awards, but eventually I got rid of that as well. Crikey, there's so many things. I mean, I could go on, the list goes on and on and on. I just stopped doing all these things. Can anyone relate to that? Now, that doesn't mean these things don't happen. They're all outsourced to other people because I have, certain bums on seats, certain people that are doing certain jobs within the business, and that is key. And one of my key things that I still did for quite a long time was the marketing. That was, one of my specialist areas. So I automated as much as I possibly could. And to be able to do this and to be able to step away from your business, we had to create SOPs, standard operating procedures. We have like an operations manual. We have a complete Salon business model, a whole framework. We have a Salon business. We've got everything is there, anything that anybody would need. What happens if you do this? It's all in a book. We've got like a marketing training manual, but everything's on automation. So my website is all automated. When someone signs up for a voucher and so on, and they go into like a flow, my website has sat there for over 10 years, just bringing in the clients on automation. I was involved in the upgrade of it a couple of years ago from the marketing side, but that was once in 10 years. All of my software, all of the follow-ups, and we have like a marketing funnel that is all automated. Everything's automated as much as we possibly can. The phone lines are automated, and then I get a text, an update of how many people called, was there any missed calls? So my eyes are still there if needs be. But literally, it's like pulling yourself. I can go in and I can do private clients when I want, if I want, as often as I want. I can go in, I can do training when I want, or I get people up. The thing that I'm still involved with now is the creative direction of the business because I love it, right? Because I love it and I love the photo shoots. But my job and my role is the visionary of the business. That's it. It's the visionary and it's the mentor. It's the mentor to help everyone within my team grow and develop. So I mentor them, I help them, I help them in their roles, show them where the training things are. Now, even when someone new comes in, because what happened was I had to train someone in my role to begin with. So in my case, it was Carla. She became the managing director. So I had to train her in my role. And then, of course, now she's moved out of the business more to work within Salon Jedi. She's had to train someone else. So we have a new managing director, Paul. So she is training him. But we have so much training videos. It's a full, we've got the operations manual. We've got everything. He's come to our 4-day school, which outlines our entire, so the stuff that you're learning, you're learning part of this in Light, and those of you in the main academy are learning all of this. Our entire business model, like our 4 pillars of Salon success, we teach that in a couple of ways. One is at our school, so our 4-day school, where we train the complete framework of our entire Salon business model, our Super Salon success model. He's been and come to that school just like you guys would come along to that school, right? So that's how we are training him in our ways of how we do things, just like we train you. Because it was never in my plan to have a big franchise of salons. It just was never there. For me, my mission, my journey was to share my business model with other salon owners. But you keep your name above the door, you keep the independence, you get all the support, more than a franchise. You get more in the sense of you got your operations, website advice, or in some cases, we do the websites for you. But that was my alternative to franchise that I wanted to do because of my experience of being a salon owner. I know how much you put into it. I know how passionate you are about building your own brand, your own thing, this baby that you started with your name above the door. So that was my mission, was to share my salon business with other salon owners. And that is what we do. So we have the school, which is like the framework. And then, of course, we have the academy, which is more hand holding and support. And, the operations manual itself, the template of it, that our students tweak. And, they turn it into, they take the bones of it, which some people take it and just have it as it is. And then some people take it and they use it as a framework and they tweak bits, they add bits to it, take out any bits that are not relevant to them, and so on. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to release myself from the tools. Now, here's what happens, and it's not just the tools, it's everything. What this has enabled me to do, and you might want to think about sacking yourself from some of the jobs that you do, because what it enabled me to do was step away from my business as much or as little as I wanted to. And that's grown and grown and grown over the years. To start with, I was obviously more involved. But it's helped me step away so I can then pursue other things. Like, what would you pursue if you stepped away from your business a bit more? I'm seeing some of the comments. So someone's asking, how often do I go into my salon? Well, it depends. If I'm going in for, say I want to go in and I'm doing a private client or something like that, then I can go in. Or if I'm going in, usually it's to get my hair done. And that's not very often, as you can see. Or I might go in and I do my, I can go in and do my private clients if and when I want, that kind of thing. But I don't go in as in like I go in every Monday or I go in every Tuesday or I go in, I can go in little spits and spats when and if I want. Okay. So to answer your question, I can go on holiday, I could take time off, I can do, it's not an issue, it's not a worry. I know somebody's covering it. I know they've got all the tools and the resources that they need, all the knowledge that they need. They don't need me. And in a lot of cases, they probably run it better without me. Right? So I trust them. I've helped them flourish into leaders. And my team are amazing at their job. To be able to be so fantastic at your job, and the stylists that are on the floor and so on, to be so fantastic at your job and not have the owner there continually. So you're just doing it because they're there, that's just phenomenal. They're self-motivated, skilled individuals. And that's part of the business model, is learning how to attract the right people to your team that support your vision and that understand that you need that space to go off and do your other vision, whatever that may be. So in my case, it was to teach other salon owners, and build Salon Jedi Academy and so on. But it enabled me, believe it or not, and this is where some people get stuck. It enabled me, because people get stuck and they think, well, if I don't do it, I'm going to lose the business, I'm going to lose the clients and so on. I turned my salon into a multi 6-figure salon brand. I've grown it into the top 1% of salons in the UK, in my country. I could not have done that behind the chair doing the job of 20 people that I've covered here today. Because if that is what you want, you cannot do it when you're servicing clients 100% of the time, or when you have no systems in place. How are you going to step away eventually if you have no systems in place, right? If you're just winging it, if it completely relies on you. So think about how much freedom you actually have, and think about how much freedom you actually want. Because it is actually an important question, because before you know it, listen, 20 years, 20 years I have owned my salon now. Where has that come from? This is what's making me think about this stuff now, because it's like, whoa, look at, what's happened over that 20 years. And, most of that, well, at least half of that anyway, if not more, it's been like I've had that freedom, and I did it by choice. I did it by design. Okay, there might have been a few things along the way, like, you know, there was definitely some situations along the way where my back was against the wall, and, some things were out of my control. But in the most part, I did it by design. I chose it. I chose to become a sovereign salon owner, an entrepreneur that didn't completely rely on me being there all the time. I wanted that security for my family. I wanted that security, and I believe it's because of that that it's grown into such a sustainable salon business. And it's still relevant. We're winning the awards, going in for awards, nominated for awards, and so on. Still very relevant, and within our local community, all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm the visionary and I'm the mentor. That's your job when you come off the floor. One last thing that I want to share with you is I've increased the value of my salon business, and I've increased its profits exponentially. So when you become the owner and not the operator, the main burnt out, stressed out, busiest employee, right? You're really an employee of the business. You're working for the business rather than the business working for you. When you step back from that and you're the owner, and it's it's a managed salon, a management managed salon, then that can increase the value of your business by 10 times. Because when an investor looks at it, they look and go, oh, wow, even if that owner is not there, that's have no impact in the salon whatsoever. Right? There's no impact. She goes, everything's still the same, because, what she's bringing in is, tiny compared to how the salon is running. So the less that you're taking in, and the less it's reliant on you, the more valuable that is to an investor, the more they're willing to pay. A few other things to think about is, once you learn and you crack all the automation side of it, right? When you've got your website sitting up there, it's number one. It's bringing in 2,000 new clients a year, up to 2,000 new clients a year, say, right? Even hundreds, whatever it may be, you've got that website that's sitting there that you can prove and show. Look at the amount of new clients that we get coming in every single month, right? Memberships, recurring revenue. Like any investor looking at my business, they're looking at recurring revenue, that I can show them the percent of clients that are on a membership, a monthly membership. That's recurring revenue. They're looking at future bank, they're looking at predictability, and they're looking at how much is it going to affect my investment. Like, how much do you take into the business? With you not being there, you're out of the picture, how is that going to affect my investment? And when they see nothing, that is highly, and when they see it's already all running, they just have to, plug in, they come in, and that's it, because they've got a management team running it. There's a whole education academy next to it that they can learn anything inside out about how it works, right? They've got it ready that they can scale it. They can turn it into the big franchise that I never ever wanted to do. Can you see how incredibly valuable that is? So what I would ask you is, the next time that you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed out, and you're feeling like, oh, how can I do this, and so on, you really have to look and think, anybody in your situation, if you're doing the job of about 10 people, will be the same. And all of those dreams that you have of the things that you would love to do one day, they're never going to happen if you are working full time behind the tools. Now, listen, if that's what you want to do, that's okay. But someone has to do all the other stuff. Because how can you do that and then still try and be the marketer and still try and drive the business and still try and support your team and still be the bookkeeper and still deal with all the stock and the front of house and the reps and the clients, and like, it's not possible to do that and to do that exceptionally well. So don't beat yourself up. It's not you. It's anybody would be in the same boat. Nobody could do that. Now, so what you have to do is you have to have the clarity on looking at your future and thinking, what is it that I truly want? What is it that I really, 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 truly want for my salon business? Do I want to build a salon that gives me freedom? Do I want to build a salon that I'm the one that's doing all the hair, but I'm going to get someone else in to do all the management stuff because I'm not good at that? I'm going to get someone in to get all the automations set up. Or what is it that you want to do? Or do you want to get off the tools 70%, 50%, 25%, 100%? That's what we help people do. So our Jedis in our main academy, they are reducing their time on on the tools as much as they possibly can. Not everyone's at that stage yet, but that's their future plan. They're getting things in place now that they know eventually that's what I want. I want to build a thriving salon business, right? Hundreds of thousands of pounds. Some have already done it. And it runs not completely reliant on me. I don't even carry a key. I'm not even a key holder in my salon business, right? I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds nuts, but that's how I want it to be. A couple of things to watch out for when you take this journey. So here's a couple of things. If you are genuinely seriously interested in finding out more about this, if you're in light and you're thinking, hold on a second, this is what I want. How do I do this? Where do I go next? Should I come to the school? Should I join the main academy? Is there anything in light that I can access now that helps me do this? What you can do is you can book a free clarity call, okay, with one of my team, just to help you in this process to see what is the right future for you. Is it staying on the tools? Is it getting off the tools and building, a salon business model? What is it? So if you need a bit of clarity, especially as we're coming to the end of this year and going into 2023, if you want some clarity around that, you can book a free clarity call. What I'll do after this is I will pop it in the comments, okay? So after this call, check in the comments. I'll pop it in there. Because none of my team are on right now. I'll pop it in here. So this was a bit of an impromptu call. I'll pop it in the comments, okay? And you can book a free clarity call with one of my team, and let's help you at least have the clarity of this is where I'm going, right? Because you need that. You need clear goals. Let's go into 2023 that you have got clear goals. You know exactly where it is that you want to go, and you know how to get there. And you also know how we can help you get there. There might be things within light that you're not even accessing. Dush, dush. Right? You're not even using it. You're not even utilizing it. And there's gold in there, right? There's gold in there. So book a call. Let's help point you in the right direction so you can go into 2023 with that clear clarity of where you want to go and your plan of how you're going to get there. Okay. So a couple of things that I want to say that are key in the process. Okay. And I know that some of you, it might seem a bit overwhelming because you might have a business that you're on your own at the moment, or you might have a very small team and it just seems like a huge hurdle. Okay, it does take time. So for example, when our students come into the main academy, they're in for a minimum of a year, right? A minimum of a year. That's just minimum. That doesn't mean after the year that I would expect that everything is spot on and nailed, because we're always improving, right? We're always improving. But the thing is, even if it took 2 years, 2 years is going to pass. Even if it took 3 years, that time is going to pass anyway. I always remember someone saying that to me, and it just hit that button in my mind. The time passes anyway. We know this. It's like 3 years seems like far in the future. We know it's not. That time is going to pass anyway. So isn't it better using your time, baby steps along the way, always doing, even if it's baby steps, you're moving towards your goal. And if that's fully systemizing your salon and getting it ready for scale or sale, whatever it is that you want to do, then just start. Just start. It's not going to be any harder than it is spending the next 2 or 3 years struggling with overwhelm, procrastination, confusion, uncertainty, worry, stress. It's not going to be any harder than that to commit to saying, I'm going to do the work. That's it. I'm going to do the work. This is what I want. It's not going to be any harder. There's a few things to think about. I'll give you a few key things for me. Just I'll come back in. I'll do something else on this another time because I know I can only get so much in this time. Front of house was key for me. That was one of the first key roles that I had in place that could help me do a lot of the jobs, client manager, as I call it. But there's specific things that they need to do, right? So it's not just any person that you're trying to get the cheapest person in ever. There's things around it. We can help with that if you get to that stage. But front of house is key. I'm a client manager. Also, sticking to your guns. There's been many times over the years when I decided that my role was changing and I was a visionary of the business and so on. There was many times where there was days that I would be doing my office day or whatever it may be, and the team would be short-staffed. And I had to reframe it in everyone's minds and even in my own mind that I couldn't go in and save the day. Because if I had started to do that, then I wasn't completely committed to my journey of what I was trying to create. If I had started to go in to save the day every time somebody was off sick, what do you think? Type into the comments. What do you think would have happened? What do you think would happen if I would be training the team that every time someone's off, every time there's a bit of a, something happens, don't worry, I'm going to step in and save the day? No. And then, of course, you would then be seeding this belief of, oh, well, if I am off sick, I know that it'll be fine. The team will be fine because Caroline will just come in and do it. Do you have any idea how difficult that has been to begin with over the years, to actually be going through that thing where you're like, and especially in the beginning, I know that they're going to be feeling stressed out. I know that they're hitting targets. I know that they're looking at me with that puppy eyes to come in and help. And to be able to say no in that situation, that takes commitment. But I had to reframe my identity, my position, their perception of me, everything. I had to reframe it as if, imagine I am not even a hairdresser. Imagine that I couldn't even do that. Imagine that I'm the manager, I'm the visionary, I'm the director, the business owner, but I don't even have those skills. I don't even know how to do it. And the thing is, after I'd stopped doing colouring for so long, I wouldn't have been able to pick up any colour anyway. But the idea is, what I'm trying to get across is, you have to become that person, right? That your vision of yourself in the future, that person who's no longer doing the jobs of 10 people. Because if not, you will get sucked back in. And there will be times that you will be incredibly challenged. And there was times in the beginning when my first, when my client manager, managing director, Carla, when she came in, where people would just keep still coming up to me. I'd be working on the floor, doing the hair and so on, and they would just keep coming up asking me. And every time I would just say, all right, I'd listen. Then I'd be like, well, ask Carla, see what she thinks. And then they'd keep coming over. And rather than never going, okay, I'll just quickly answer because that'll make it easier. Nope. Ask Carla. No matter what it was, even if it was a problem and Carla might not have even really known at that point, it was always ask Carla. I had to give her that space and that opportunity to try and solve it, or at least think of how she may have solved it. And then she can come to me afterwards and be like, well, this has happened. This is how I'm thinking of solving it. This is what I've said so far. What do you think? Of course, because it was a training process, right? And then it would be either, that's perfect, that's what I would have said, or it would be, well, that's okay, but actually, this is what I would have done, and here's why, right? Okay, all of a sudden now she is learning, that's the skills of set has gone up. So if anything like that happens again, she has that knowledge. So there's definitely that process that has to take place, okay? Yeah, I'm going to stop now because I could just keep going on and on and on. What I'm going to say to you is you have to be committed, and to be committed, you need a clear vision and a clear goal of what it is that you want to achieve. So if you do want a free clarity call with one of my team, I will pop the link in here. For those of you in the main academy, I'm going to quickly jump over there in case you have any specific questions for me. We'll do a Q&A over there, because I know many of you are already working on this and you might be already coming up against some issues. So I'm going to jump in there, answer some questions, but the rest of you in light, please take my advice and please use your training, take action. Time's going to pass anyway, right? Time's going to pass anyway. You might as well have upgrade your skill set, upgrade your mindset between now and then, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year down the line, okay? And if you're interested in finding out more about how we can make this happen for you, then book your clarity call. And I will see you soon, guys. Take care. Bye. Thanks for joining today.